is ready to meet Alex? Are we ready? He is a man that truly embodies what it means to thrive, the greatest free solo climber in the world, Alex Honnold.
Good morning, everybody. That's a raucous welcome. Thank you, guys. I hope that woke everybody up for morning and day two. I feel like watching the free solo trailers the first thing in the morning has got to be a rude awakening. So, like Ryan said, I'm going to tell a story about free soloing, about rock climbing. I couldn't really see the hands from backstage. How many of you guys have seen free solo? Oh wow, good number. Okay. Actually, how many of you guys rock climb? Anybody? Okay. That's, like 8 of you. That's cool. That's better than nothing. So I'm going to tell some stories about rock climbing, talk a little bit about the preparation, the training, the journey I took to get to the point where I felt comfortable free soloing El Cap. I'll keep it somewhat brief so that we'll have time to chat with Ryan and to chat with you guys. So keep your questions. If you think up anything really interesting, save for the end because I love Q&A. So briefly, this is me climbing as a child. There you go. So backstory, I've always loved climbing. I didn't start properly rock climbing until I was 10 or so, but basically this is me as, I don't know how old I am in this photo, but I always loved climbing on things. And I always loved the exposure, I loved being up high. And so my family took me to a rock climbing gym when it opened when I was about 10 years old. So I've basically been climbing maybe 5 days a week since I was 10, and I just turned 39. So it's almost 30 years of climbing all the freaking time. And so, and I think it's important because when we get into some of the sort of extreme free soloing pictures and all that kind of stuff, people are like, oh, well, what do you do to train? I'm like, it's literally been my entire life. Like I've been doing this my whole life as much as I can, consistently pushing myself as hard as I can. So you got to remember it in sort of that context of something that I've been doing forever at the highest level that I can. And so I came into a climbing gym. I did sort of youth competitions, things like that. Was never really particularly good at them, but loved it. Climbed all the time, and being a kid in the suburbs, my parents didn't climb, my family didn't climb. I would just ride my bicycle to the climbing gym and just go by myself for a bunch of hours. Listen to headphones and climb for hours, and I was really into it. And at that time, I was consuming climbing culture, climbing media. This is like pre-smartphones and pre-social, all that kind of stuff. But I'd read all the magazines, like watch the little VHS on loop in the gear shop at the climbing gym, and so the free soloing didn't come out of a vacuum for me. So this is a photo of Peter Croft, who's a very famous. He's sort of an iconic climber from the previous generation. He was very well known in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and he's still climbing all the time. And so this is the kind of image that it's like a poster in the bathroom where I grew up at the gym. And so I always saw things like this and thought, like, that seems cool. But I was just a suburban kid climbing at the climbing gym. There's no obvious way for that to become me. But that always represented sort of the pinnacle of, like, that seems like the most freedom, the high degree of excellence. I mean, you just look at Peter. He did this for the first time this is a very famous route in Yosemite. He did this the same year that I was born. And I could see these photos and be like, wow, like that is mastery. And so I sort of aspired to that. And, over the years, sort of fast forwarding a bit, I went to university for 1 year, dropped out of UC Berkeley because I was like, I'm not going to be an engineer. But actually, well, I maybe could have been. Technically, I took a semester off to go rock climbing, and now I've just taken, 30 or 40 semesters off. I'm still just taking some time off. But so after sort of a gap year from Berkeley, this is a photo of me free soloing that same route. This is called the Rostrum in Yosemite. And this photo, you can see I'm climbing over this other party, and they're, the guy with the helmet down below me, and there's a rope underneath me, but I'm just climbing over them. This photo only exists because I ran into these guys again on the bus later, and the guy was like, "Whoa, I took some pictures of you." The person who snapped this was just at the belay, like waiting to bring his partner up, and then he was just like, "Wow," took some pictures, and I climbed by, and then I ran into him again on the bus. He gave me some of the photos on a little stick or whatever back in the day. I was like, that's so cool. And so this is, I think, maybe one of the only other photos in this presentation that's pre-professional climbing, professional photographer, all that kind of stuff. You can see my shorts are like all torn, and this is just me as a scrappy kid trying to live up to what my heroes had done before me. This is kind of the first notable free solo that I did in Yosemite. And for me at the time, this route represented sort of the edge of what was possible. I'd seen photos of Peter on it and was like, this is sort of the limit of what seems, and at the time it was the limit of what people had sort of free soloed before. So I was like, this is amazing. But I did this, I guess I was 22 when I repeated this, and it was sort of like, okay, like that felt good. I enjoyed it. I felt comfortable. Like, what's next? Like, what can I do that's more challenging? And so, how many of you guys have been to Yosemite at least? Because I know a lot are based in San Francisco. That's cool. How many of you guys have climbed Half Dome? Okay, that's one hand two hands that I can see. That's cool. There is a trail up the back, so it is actually quite easy to hike. But for anybody who's motivated, but it's one of the more striking, iconic walls in Yosemite. And so, for me though, it's a 2,000-foot face. You can kind of see the rock face is the part that looks really sheer. So that's a 2,000-foot wall, and it sits kind of 2,500 feet above the valley floor. So it really sort of lords over the east end of Yosemite. You see it from everywhere. But it represented the next obvious step for me in terms of difficulty, because climbing is also broken into grades. The technical difficulty of a climb is there's a whole grading system for it. And so even though this face was much bigger than what I'd done before, the grade was only slightly harder. So it was only a little bit harder than what I'd done previously, but just much bigger in scale. So I was kind of like, oh, that represents a good next step for me, where it's a little bit harder and a lot bigger, but seems attainable. But the challenge for me was that I didn't really know how to prepare for free soloing something like that, because as you can imagine, it's quite a lot of work to hike up there, climb the wall, hike down. And so you can rally a friend or a partner, you can climb it with a rope, once or twice, you do it a couple times, but each time you go up there, it's kind of a big undertaking. And so it's not something that you can just do over and over to practice. And at the time, I didn't even own that much rope. I couldn't feasibly hike to the top and rappel down the face to work on it by myself. And so I didn't really know how to go about training for a potential free solo on Half Dome. And so I did the bare minimum preparation, which is that a friend and I climbed the route together with ropes, all totally safe, all conventional climbing. But as we climbed it, I tried to make mental notes. I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. I'm trying to remember which feet I use here and there. And then, we came down, had dinner, chilled, and then the next day, I spent the whole day just resting in my van, visualizing, trying to remember what I had done, imagining what it would feel like to go back up there. And then the day after that, just went back up onto Half Dome. And so this is free soloing Half Dome. And as you can imagine from the limited preparation, it didn't go as smoothly as I would have liked. I basically immediately felt sort of uncomfortable, kind of scared, didn't quite remember what to do. Sort of in the middle of the wall, got slightly lost on this impromptu detour. Basically, I had done it one way, which is physically quite hard. And then as I was climbing, I was like, I just don't feel that good. And I decided that I was going to go around that section because I knew that variation existed that went in sort of like a several 100-foot circle around the really hard part. So I was like, oh, I'll just figure out that variation and I'll skip the hard part. But then since I'd never done the variation before and didn't really know where I was, long story short, I'm 1,000 feet up in the center of this giant granite wall, wondering if I'm off route, sort of like, oh, does anybody climb this way? Like, where am I? Like, will I even? And I was like, oh, God. And so, which you can imagine, I mean, the whole experience, just imagine just getting more and more nervous the whole time, basically. You're like, oh, it's just kind of intense. But the hardest parts of Half Dome were all up at the top. And so, yeah, excuse me. So the hardest rated section of Half Dome is a slab up at the top. And so slab climbing is if you imagine like a smooth wall of granite, and then you just tilt it back a little bit, but there are no cracks, there are no edges, there's nothing for your hands to hold on to. It's just the friction of your shoes, basically, that sticks to the granite. So if you imagine like a granite countertop that tips back to 75 or 80 degrees, it's less than vertical. So you can basically stand there without your hands if you really balance and trust your feet well. But it's also the scariest style of climbing it's kind of the scariest style to climb full stop, but it's definitely the scariest style to free solo, because no matter how fit you are and how confident you feel if your foot slips, there's nothing to hold on to. So being strong and like trying really hard doesn't really matter if all you're doing is balancing on the very edge of your toe. And so I found myself on this slab, and it's about 150 feet below the summit of Half Dome, so you're way up at the top of the wall, and down climbing doesn't really feel like a feasible option at that point. Oftentimes with free soloing, if you feel uncomfortable, you could try to bail or go down or something. But if you've climbed 1,900 feet out of a 2,000-foot wall, you're just kind of like, I don't think I'm going back down. You're like, I think I'm going to the top. And it's slightly surreal because the top of Half Dome for the 2 people who have hiked Half Dome, but the edge of the wall, you can just peek right over and look straight down 2,000 feet. It's pretty remarkable. But so it means that when you're climbing on the face, you can look up and just see random tourists poking their head over from time to time. And so I was in the midst of a full-on personal crisis on the side of the wall here, and I was like, God, I hope nobody looks over the edge, because you just don't really want anybody watching while you're in the midst of inner turmoil. But the thing is, I could hear people laughing and chatting. I mean, it's not, especially so Half Dome has a permitting system now, so it's like less crowded nowadays. But in the past, honestly, the summit of Half Dome at peak season looked like a section of this room. Like people hanging out, eating and drinking and laughing and like on their phones and doing, it's crowded on top. And so I could hear all that. I could hear people like chatting on the phones and eating their sandwiches and doing their thing. But I'm 150 feet down, trying to stick to this blank slab, being like, oh my God. And so I got to a move where I just couldn't quite remember exactly what I'd done. Where I was like, oh, do I do left foot or do I do right foot? And then I started to hesitate. And at that point, I'd already been on the wall for several hours. I was already getting a little bit frayed. Both afraid and sort of frayed, like just wearing thin. I was like, oh, it's wearing on, to be in that state of tension for so long. And I was like, this is so scary. And I couldn't quite remember. And then it all started to unravel. We were like, I just don't know what to do, and I'm scared, And so then I had the full moment of panic of like, what do you do? Which foot? Which at the time, felt interminable, felt like a long, oh no, this is a major crisis. In reality, it was probably 20 seconds of treading water on some footholds, being like, oh God, because my calves are getting pumped, there's nothing to hold on to. And once you start getting scared, you get sweatier and everything feels more slick, and you're like, oh God. And so finally, I just had to commit to what I thought was the correct foot. I was like, okay, I think I'll just stand on that left foot and stand up and just believe. And so I pasted my foot against a little tiny thing and stood up, and thankfully my foot didn't blow, and so here we are. Great, and so, yeah, nice. But yeah, so stuck the move, whatever, and actually from there to the top is quite easy. Like basically, you grab this hold. I was like hesitating, finally stood up, grabbed a good hold, and then from there it was quite a bit easier. And so I basically ran to the top after that and paddling. And it's pretty surreal because I popped over the lip, and like I said, it's like all these people sitting right there. And normally when you come over the top of Half Dome, when you have a harness and a rope and all the gear on, all your stuff is jangling, all the little metal climbing gear. People are like, oh my God, how many days did it take you? That's so incredible, tell me about it. But when you pop over the lip with nothing on you, people are just like, oh, that tourist is lost and too close to the edge. And you're sort of like, ah. But anyway, so I topped out, and I was like shirtless and all pumped, and just like, ah! And then there are all these folks just eating their sandwiches, and you're like, okay, chill. I'll just walk down. You're like, what a weird experience. But the thing about it, so I made it to the summit of Half Dome. I was proud of myself. I'd done this difficult free solo. Had never been done before. I was like, this is great. But at the same time, I felt like I'd barely gotten away with it. I was basically scared the whole time. I was uncomfortable. I wasn't really proud of my climbing. I didn't feel like a great climber while I was doing it. And it's kind of like, I love free soloing. I love challenging free solos, but at the same time, that's not the climbing experience that I'm looking for. Like, I want to go up there and feel like a great climber. And if I feel like I'm just barely getting away with it, that's not for me. It's like I'm soloing for my own pleasure. I'm rock climbing for my own pleasure. And it's like if it all goes sideways, like I don't need that. So basically, immediately after Half Dome, you can see El Cap in the distance. That's the 3,000-foot wall behind me, which looks quite small in that photo. But But so that was the next obvious thing, and historically, that's another important thing with all my soloing. It's like there's a historical context for all this kind of stuff. Like these were some of the biggest walls that were first climbed in the late 50s and early 60s, and they've held like a central place in climbing history since then, sort of climbing mythology. And Yosemite Valley itself has held a central place. You know, it's like the mecca of climbing. And so after free soloing Half Dome, I was like, obviously free soloing El Cap is next. That's the clear next challenge. And yet, it's just so daunting. You know, it's so big, it's so much harder. And so starting the year after, I was like, okay, you know, next year I'm free soloing El Cap. And then the next year I drove into Yosemite, looked up at El Cap, and I was like, there is no way I'm free soloing El Cap, you know. And it just kind of sat on my back burner for literally years after that. Like every year is like, I'm gonna do that. And every year I'd show up and be like, there's no chance I'm doing that. And so part of the reason is that the scale of El Cap is different. And so for those that have never seen this kind of thing, so these are portaledges. These are people camping on the side of El Cap. Most people who climb El Cap spend 3 to 5 days on the wall. So you hike to the base with literally hundreds of pounds of gear sometimes, and then you climb a ways and you haul your stuff up with you, and then you camp, and then you spend the next day climbing and you haul your stuff and you camp some more. And so people typically spend 3 to 5 days. And so I had climbed El Cap in a day. I mean, and people do climb El Cap in a day. The speed record is a handful of hours. I mean, it is possible to do it faster, but when you look at the wall, you sort of imagine it as this multi-day sort of like vertical backpacking trip. And so it really kind of took a paradigm shift to imagine free soloing it, you know, to think about hiking up with hundreds of pounds of gear and spending 5 days on the wall, or to hike up with nothing but a chalk bag and a pair of shoes and then just climb. You're like, man, it's a pretty big leap, you know? And so for many years, it just felt like too big of a leap. Like I couldn't really wrap my head around making that big of a change. But I kept wanting to do it. You know, it was still this dream. I was like, oh, I'd love to do that somehow. I just don't quite know how. And sort of by good fortune, actually, the folks for those that have seen the film Free Solo, the co-directors of Free Solo, Jimmy and Shai, the couple that made the movie, they approached me about doing a feature film at exactly the same time that I had personally just decided that I was going to focus on El Cap. That I was like, after years of wanting to do something, like I'd kind of been hoping that one year I would drive in and look up at the wall and it would just look easy to me. And then, or not easy, but that I would look at it and be like, oh, that's gonna be fun, like no problem. And after 6 or 7 years of coming to Yosemite every year, and I was spending about 3 months a year in Yosemite, I finally realized that it was never going to look easy. You know, I was like no matter how much I want to do this, unless I put in the work and actually try really hard, it's never going to just happen. I was like, this is too big and too hard for it to just fall in my lap, you know? And so I had finally just decided that I was going to put in all the effort and sort of do the prep work, even though I didn't know whether or not it was possible to free solo, but I was like, I'm going to put in the time and find out. And then the co-directors of the film approached me just by coincidence at the same time about doing a feature film, and I was like, well, that's perfect, because you guys can help me work on this project that I want to do. And so that kind of started the journey that you see in the film, which is like 2 years of direct preparation and training for the actual route on El Cap. And so I started that journey. These are a few photos. This is sort of like, think like a Rocky IV training montage. Like the physical side of preparation is relatively simple, because you can climb El Cap with a rope and you can feel how tired do your arms get, how tired do your legs get, like how much. And so the physical training in a lot of ways is easy or sort of simple, in the same way that training for a marathon is simple. Maybe not easy, but it's like you know what to do. You can just go out and do your miles until you feel comfortable. And so this is like sport climbing with my wife. This little cave is a half hour from my house. I live in Las Vegas, best climbing in the country. And this is why. I mean, so this cave is a half-hour drive, half-hour walk, and then you can spend the day with your wife just like climbing and training. And so the physical side of it just involved, 5 or 6 days a week of this type of training nonstop all season until I felt strong enough, basically. And then a little bit of sort of specific training. This is hangboarding. This is like isolating specific fingers. Just well, whatever, it speaks for itself. You just dangle by your fingertips until they feel strong enough. But again, it's the same way. The physical training is relatively straightforward. Like if you want to get stronger, you just try hard and you work out and you get stronger. But the real challenge was the specific preparation for the wall itself. And this is where, no matter how fit you feel and like how strong and like you've done all your workouts and you're like, I'm ready for anything. And then you look at the wall and you're like, you know what? I'm not ready for that. You're like, that's really freaking scary still. And so this is where the sort of magic happened, the actual direct preparation on the route, where I tried to take all the question marks, all the uncertainty for the actual journey itself up the wall and slowly work through the different sections. And so, like I said, it's easy. It's not easy, but it's safe enough to climb the wall with the rope. And so I've climbed it many times over the years via many different routes. You can climb all different aspects of this face. You can climb different parts. And so I climbed on it a lot with partners and ropes and sort of determined the way that I thought I might be able to climb it without a rope. And then on that section, or on that route, I basically went through and wrote down all the parts that I was like, oh, this seems sketchy, I need to work on this, work on that. And then I just started working down the list. And so this is a photo of this is a famous American alpinist, Conrad Anker. He's a friend of mine. But so he's climbing, this is a photo of him just climbing up the bottom of El Cap with this empty backpack. And the two of us climbed maybe 1,800 feet up the wall, maybe 2,000 feet up, to this specific section of crack that had a bunch of loose rocks in it and some bushes. And it's something that I knew that I would have to free solo, but there's just a bunch of stuff in it, like nature basically in the way. And you can't just throw the rocks down because you could kill people at the base, because from 2,000 feet up. And so we basically climbed all the way up there. We filled that backpack full of rocks. We cleaned out some of the bushes. And then we rappelled all the way back down the wall with this giant backpack full of rocks. And it felt completely stupid. You're sort of like, oh, we just climbed half a wall, loaded a backpack full of probably 100 pounds of rock, and then rappelled for half the day. And you're like, man, this is dumb. Like I feel like I'm just toiling in my grandparents' garden or something, just like. But that's kind of what it took, because if there's even a single meter of climbing that doesn't feel good for whatever reason, it's a 3,000-foot face. If there's even one body length section that doesn't go, then the route doesn't go. And so section by section, I just had to work through all the things like that. I was like, well, if this part feels sketchy for whatever reason, I will work on it until it gets a little bit better. So this is a photo from the summit of El Cap. You can see I have something like, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,200 feet of rope on me. And this was my preferred way to do a lot of the preparation, was to hike to the summit by myself, rappel down the face, and then spend as long as I needed hanging on the rope, practicing things, working on sequences, climbing big sections, and just rehearsing. And this picture actually is a big part of the reason that I agreed to do the film free solo, that I was happy to have a film crew around, because carrying all that rope to the summit of the wall is a lot of work. And then like managing the rope to rappel in and then pull the rope back out and coil it all up and put it away, and then come the next day and rappel back in and do it. Basically, it's like a ton of manual labor. And part of the appeal of doing the film for me was that I would have a built-in team to help with this kind of labor. And I was kind of like, because like some of my friends probably would have been willing to help for a day or two, but I kind of knew that it was going to take me seasons of effort. I was like, you just need somebody who's like on the same program with you. And so the film crew was perfect for that. And so next I'm going to show a little video clip that shows some of the preparation and some of the, well, you'll just see. I need to like dial it in so much that, it doesn't matter if there's like a stadium of people watching me, because it's so easy for me that I'm just like, check this out, and just do it. Pitch 1 to stay left towards the top splitter, feels more secure. Pitch 2, trust the right foot, rock on, trust the feet, right hand to the last undercling. 8, easy romp, go fast. And 9, stay outside of the down climb, careful of blocks. Pitch 26, so lie back up the corner, key left hand pinch thing, right foot back step on a little edge, left foot pace against the wall, stand up. Left hand to the huge ear jug thing, switch the feet, match the big jug, left foot jams into the crack. Then you see right hand down pulling on the top part of the jug, left hand goes into this flared slot thing, which you can either fist jam or hand jam. Either way, it's like a flare jam in the slot. Sag down onto it, right hand crosses under to an undercling side pull, right foot sinks low to a flat edge, left foot steps through to an edge, right foot back steps really high so you can sag your weight around the corner without having to swing, left foot out to the big horn, right hand through to a little finger pocket. You go left foot out to an edge around the corner. You can actually push all the way into the corner. Then you can grab this down pulling right hand, flat, like small crimp. Left hand to the other undercling, switch your feet on the rail, and then just reach through the jugs, and then you're just done. The key thing for the crux: pull hard, trust feet, trust, underline, double exclamation point, period. Autopilot, period. Okay, so that gives you a sense of just the psychosis going on. I watched that again, and I was like, oh, it kind of gives me anxiety. Like, but no, so you saw it. So I spent a lot of time in my van. I mean, a lot of those shots of me sitting in my van, journaling, writing, trying to remember. And so I'd spent a lot of time on the rope, rappelling it, and you can see some of those shots. I'm hanging, I'm attached to a rope, but I'm climbing sections of the wall. And so I'd climb them, and then I would try to memorize, did I use my left foot? Did I use my right foot? Like what exactly did I do? And then for the hardest sections, I would write it all down so I could remember it better. And I mean, it's a lot of effort. And so this is a random photo of just lifestyle, this is living in the van. But I include this just because that was a big part of the process, was to have enough time to myself to just process all that, to remember and to think. And yeah, so I'd erased all the social apps off my phone. I stopped responding to email for so long that I stopped getting email. Which I would strongly recommend at some point. It's totally incredible. But basically, I'd spent months just deeply into this, and I was like, man, I have very few distractions. I have very little going on other than this. And so anytime I was cooking food or cutting vegetables or something, if I suddenly was like, should I try my left hand? I could basically, I had the time and the space to just stop and think about it. Like, what would it be like if I did it the other way? Or like, what would it feel like to be in this position? And so I basically structured my whole life around having enough empty, free time that I could process all this. And I worked my way through my whole list. I worked off all the little sections. And eventually, I got at the point where I was like, okay, I've done all the things I need to do. I've done all the prep. I'm physically peaking. I'm in the best shape that I will ever be for this kind of thing. And either I will do it or I will walk away from it and know that I'm never going to do it because I'm never going to be better than I am right now. And so after 8 or 9 years of dreaming about it and 2 years of direct preparation and training and all that, obviously I was like, I'm doing it. And so these are a few images of the actual free solo, things that aren't in the film actually. And this is one of the lower slabs. Some of the low angle stuff, just like what I'd done on Half Dome that's so scary, the low angle frictiony things, though in this particular photo I'm pulling over this little low roof. But this section of the wall was a variation that I'd found. The actual normal route that people climb with a rope goes around those bushes to the left and then goes up past a bolt and those whatever. And it was a little section of climbing that I just never felt comfortable doing. Like when I climbed it with a rope, I've actually never fallen off that move, but I've always felt like I could fall off that move no matter how much I practiced it. Like it just has this slippery foothold, and I've always been like, no matter how much I practice, it just doesn't feel good. And so after like literally years of doing it this one way, it finally occurred to me that I was like, if I don't have a rope on anyway, I can go wherever I want. Like I don't need to follow where the route normally goes. And so I started casting a slightly wider net and just kind of swinging around on the wall and like looking for other ways. And I found this sort of amazing little sequence of holds off to the side that you would never climb if you had a rope or gear because there's no way to protect it. There are no bolts. There's nothing for you to clip your rope into. So it'd be super dangerous for normal climbing. But I was kind of like, well, if you're going to die anyway, what difference does it make? It's like, and as it turns out, it was just slightly more secure. It was something where I was like, oh, by practicing this, I can feel comfortable on these holds without feeling like I'm going to slip. And so I was like, great. And so there were a few little variations like that actually took me a now slightly embarrassingly long time to figure out because for years I've been kind of climbing the route up the wall that you normally climb, like with a rope on. And it took a long time to be like, you know what, if I'm trying to do it without a rope, like, why not just look a little wider? Like look more to the side, like look for other ways. And so, thankfully I did wind up finding a few variations like that made certain sections slightly easier or at least slightly more secure, things that felt like more doable. But this is the crack that I was talking about. And you can still see a few rocks up in there. But basically, when I got there, I knew that it was clean, it was prepped, it was good to go. And so there was no hesitation. I could just climb right through it knowing that it was as good as it needed to be. And so this is one of the many little question marks along the way where I was like, okay, we spent a day working on it, I prepped it, it's good, and now I can just climb right through. One photo from the boulder prom, for those that remember the karate kick, this is like the hardest physical route the hardest physical move on the whole route. And this is probably what I spent the bulk of my time visualizing and imagining because the boulder prom is something like 10 or 12 hard moves, the hardest physical sequence on the whole 3,000-foot face. And so I spent a ton of time just imagining every variation of like, what will it feel like? Like, what if it's more humid? Like, what if my hands feel dry? What if the holes feel slippy? Like, what if my chalk, just all the different things. And I just had imagined all of that ahead of time, so that when I got there, I just tightened my shoes and then did it exactly like I'd done it in practice so many times, but with no hesitation at all. And one photo from the top, and then I'm going to show a brief video clip. Let's see. So this is climbing towards the top.
It's over now. Oh God, it's done. Oh God. Oh God. Oh my God, I can't believe what I just witnessed. Oh God.
You did too.
Oh. Oh.
Honestly, it makes me a little emotional to watch that every time. I'm not sure. I love the music, and then, after years of effort and years of training, and it's still by far the climb that I'm most proud of, and certainly put the most into. And then after the whole free solo film tour and doing so many events, that every time I hear the music, I'm like, oh, it's just, it's a lot. But I think with that, I'll bring Ryan back out of the stage and take some questions. I guess the takeaway is just that after 9 years of dreaming, 2 years of direct effort and training and practice and everything else, that's how you free solo El Cap. So if anybody wants to, that's how you do it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Alex Honnold.
Yeah.
Incredible, man. Incredible. Let's have a seat. So many questions, right? So many questions. If you guys have a question for Alex, we have some mic runners around the room. Just raise your hand and we will get to you. I have so many questions after watching that, Alex. Watching you free solo, watching the video, watching the pictures. The first question I have, when you go to the grocery store, you never take 2 trips from the car, do you?
I don't even do
when you deliver the groceries to your front.
Do I carry them all?
You
at once?
never take 2 trips.
I do carry them all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
knew it.
One bag on each finger, and just
I knew it.
Yeah.
Seriously, I want to see the size of your hand. The size of your hand, and you literally, your hands are they're like cigars,
They're
like cigars.
They're like stonemason hands.
Yeah.
It's like,
But really, it is a lot of working out. It's a lot of fitness, but it's a lot of mental game. And one thing, I rewatched the documentary last night, and the one thing that surprised me, and I forgot about this the first time around, was you talk about being scared a lot. You look up at El Capitan, you said, that scares me. You would think that somebody like you don't deal with fear, but we all deal with fear. We all get scared in our profession or, to take a risk. How do you overcome that fear?
Well, I think that's why it took so many years of visualizing and dreaming and training and practice. I mean, yeah, it's funny because a lot of people are like, well, you just don't feel fear. And I'm like, well, if I didn't feel fear, I would have done it immediately and not spent 9 years working on it. It's like, no, I mean, I would look at the wall and be like, that is so scary. And even now, it's interesting because I go back to Yosemite now, and I've still been doing other things in Yosemite. But I look at the wall and I'm like, man, the idea of free soloing that seems pretty scary. Because like my takeaway was that with enough prep, I got to a moment where in this moment it feels incredible and I'm totally prepared and this feels fine. And now I know that I probably could get back to that moment if I needed to. Like if I had free solo cap again for some reason, I could probably get there with a bit of effort. But it's not as if you just look at it and it looks easy now. It's like, I mean, it is just, it's scary. Rock climbing is scary.
When you made the summit, you said the word, you were delighted?
I was delighted, yeah.
Delighted.
In retrospect, it feels understated, but.
Yeah. I was expecting like a scream, like Drago with Rocky and Rocky IV.
But I think actually, in some ways, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that in that moment, though, it felt natural and sort of, I'd put so much into it that I was like, oh, of course I'm doing this today. Like, this is totally fine. This is normal. And now, in retrospect, I'm like, that is so psycho. Like, oh, I put a lot into that. That's a lot, But in the moment, it was just like, this is a normal day. And I had taken great pains to make it feel like a normal day. Like, I'd spent, literally years of training so that on whatever, I forget what day it was of the week, but it's like on Tuesday morning, I'm waking up and I'm going climbing and it's just going to be normal. But that's kind of the process that I had to go through in order to make it possible for me.
I was thinking it was psycho the whole time.
Yeah.
How do you balance success and being appreciative for what you have and what you've accomplished, still wanting more, but sort of also enjoying it too? Because I think everybody in this room deals with that as well. It's like you want to achieve certain goals in your life, but as soon as you achieve that goal, it's like you look to the next goal. I think we all do that, whether it's financially, whether it's just wanting to get a raise or a promotion. How do you sort of balance that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that part of the drive for rock climbing is aesthetic or sort of intrinsic. Like, I look at certain walls and I'm like, that is incredible, and I'm motivated to do that. So despite having achieved many of the things that I want to in climbing, I'm still always motivated by other walls, other faces, expeditions, like journeying with certain partners to try different objectives. But I will say, though, that sort of interestingly, the success of the film Free Solo and just the general experience around El Cap, because that was so successful. I mean, it's not as if any of us expected to go to the Academy Awards and we won a BAFTA. We met Prince William and Princess Kate. You're sort of like, cool. Like, whoever thought that a climbing documentary would like be shaking hands with, it was a pretty incredible experience. But as a result, I kind of realized that nothing I do for the rest of my life will ever match that level of success or like that level of like public acclaim. And in a way, that's actually quite liberating because it just means I can focus on whatever I want to do, whatever I'm most personally inspired by. Because either way, nobody's going to care, basically. Like no matter what I do, it's not matching, So I don't know. It's quite freeing.
Is there something else that you want to do right now? Is there another challenge that you want, another mountain that you need to climb?
Yeah. There's always. I mean, I always have a list, and in a lot of ways, El Cap, it was sort of on my running to-do list of climbs that I wanted to do, and it just kept getting pushed year after year to the next year's list. And so at any given time, I always have a bunch of different things that I'm working on. And realistically, if I do half of them in a year, that's great success. And then some keep floating, some I'll never get to. That's fine. It's all about having something to get you out of bed every day.
And getting you out of bed every day. The lovely lady that is in the documentary, which when I first met Alex, I wanted to make sure they were married, and they are.
Yeah.
And it worked out, and you have 2 girls.
Yeah.
Balancing that family life, how do you like balance both of those things? And what is the enjoyment that you get from that side of your life?
Well, that I'm still learning. So so I married my girlfriend from Free Solo. So my wife Sonny, all great. We have 2 daughters. One is only 6 months, and the other's 2.5. So I'm definitely still learning to navigate what it means to climb professionally and go on big adventures and have expeditions and everything. Because of the kids, I've definitely been focusing on projects closer to home so that I can, get kids out of bed in the morning and put them to bed at night. And so and as a result, I've been sort of setting different climbing goals for myself, which generally are more focused around physical things like hard grades and sort of pushing myself physically, which is fine. I'm having a great time with that. And actually, just a couple days ago, sent one of my hardest routes in several years. And so, kind of like adapting to the season. That said, I mean, I love big adventures and I love climbing big walls like this. And I think in the coming year, I'll probably have a few opportunities to do some things like this. So we'll see. I don't know, I mean, it's just tough balance though, for sure.
Will you let your daughters climb?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope my daughters climb, but we'll see if they're into it. But no, but for sure they're gonna know how. I mean, that's all we do as a family.
Yeah.
Like whether or not they like it, that's totally fine. That's but,
They'll learn to love it.
well, no, that's not what I mean. I just mean like whether or not it's their thing and they're passionate about it, that remains to be seen. But no matter what, they're gonna know how to belay and rappel and do all the rope work and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can't be a member of the family if you can't rappel off a cliff.
Do we have any questions from the audience? All right, here we go. Let's take one.
So my standing heart rate is about 43. And when I watched your movie, I swear to God, my heart rate had to have been in the 140s, 150s, and I was on the luxury of my own couch. Yeah. So my question is, what is your heart rate as you're doing that? And how do you control it? Because if your heart rate did what mine did, there's no way you'd make it to the top.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know my heart rate. It's it's kind of it's fit athlete. I don't know. It's kind of normal. But I don't know. I mean, I think that with enough preparation, I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is that with years of effort, years of training, preparation, all the things, then the climb just feels normal. So obviously my heart rate is elevated because I am moving uphill and I'm using my muscles and it's hard work. But it's not. But I'm not racing. I'm not having an adrenaline response. I'm not scared. I'm not like over grip. I'm just climbing with the minimum effort required to go up a wall like that. Which, I mean, and fun side note, in a lot of ways, free soloing is actually easier physically than climbing with a rope, because a rope weighs about 10 pounds, let's say, if you have the whole rope out, and then your gear weighs another 5 to 10 pounds. So you wind up with like 5 to 20 pounds of weight hanging off of you. So if you free solo, quite a bit easier.
There you go. There you go. Get that rope out of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we have a question over here.
Hi, Alex. A lot of climbers get frustrated by plateauing, where they struggle to improve meaningfully. What would you tell climbers that are frustrated with that, and how would you recommend they progress to the next stage?
Dude, it's an interesting question about plateauing as an athlete, because in some ways, I've been plateaued for 15 years. Like basically, my top end of climbing performance has been roughly the same since 2008-ish. And I'd like to think that I've gotten stronger in some ways, or really like now I'm climbing at roughly the same level, maybe a tiny bit higher, but with 2 kids, So I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'll take whatever small wins I can get. But no, I don't know. I mean, I think plateauing is tough, and physical training is tough. And it was particularly difficult for me with this because to train physically for free soloing El Cap, well, nobody had ever done this before, so there's no like book about it. And there are a lot of books about climbing training, and obviously I've read them all, and all my friends are professional climbers, and we talk about all that kind of stuff all the time. But I was trying to train for something a little bit different. And anyway, so a lot of my friends were just kind of like, oh, you're doing it wrong, you should be doing it this way, you should be doing it that way. But I was like, I don't know, I think I'm on a good path. And I kind of stuck to my guns, and obviously it worked out fine. But it's just, yeah, that kind of thing is tough.
I often feel bad for parents in airports when they're carrying both of their kids. I have no sympathy for you at all. It's nothing. We have one over here.
You shared what your physical kind of training routine looked like and, preparing for that. What is that for your mental toughness? Like, what is your go-to technique to kind of calm you during the midst of all of that?
So what's my go-to technique for calming myself mentally? Yeah, I mean, there isn't, so there are kind of 2 things, I guess. There are moments of acute stress where like something goes sideways on a solo and you're just like, oh my God, now I'm really scared. In those moments, I think I basically do the same thing that anybody else does, which is try to take some deep breaths, try to compose myself, just be like, oh God. But there's not that much you can do once you get really scared like that. I mean, all you can really do is just try to slow your breathing, relax, loosen your grip, or whatever, just try to, and I don't think I'm much better at that than anybody else. I probably have a lot more practice with it just because you get scared doing this kind of thing all the time. But the better technique is to practice something enough ahead of time that you just don't have those moments of acute stress. And that's really what I try to do with El Cap, because I knew that it's just too big and too scary and too daunting. It's like, so really I just had to get it to the point that it felt totally comfortable for me, totally normal, and then I could avoid going into those stressful moments to begin with.
We got another question here. We got about 5 more minutes for some questions. Do we have? Go ahead.
Has your sense of fear, your fear of adventure, how you approach it, changed at all since you had kids?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about like my risk taking with kids and things like that. I think, it's too early to tell because I haven't really done anything super. Actually, I've done a few things that are sort of extreme since I had kids, but I haven't done anything quite like this magnitude. I'd say so far it feels like there's a little bit of a difference, but like I was saying, I think it has more to do with the fact that my goal setting has been a little bit different, like the things that I'm focused on in climbing. And so as a result, I've been spending less time climbing without a rope, and therefore climbing without a rope feels a little scarier. Though that said, I mean, I sold something, I think, a couple days ago. It was pretty easy and casual, but I don't know, we'll see. But so far, I mean, one of my friends, it's a slightly trite answer, but he's like, I wasn't trying to die before I had kids, and I'm still not trying to die. It's like, so that's...
T-shirts, don't die.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex, how are you? Good?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Yeah.
So, congratulations on being a dad. So, I'm a dad, and my son, William, is an Eagle Scout, and you inspired him to climb, and he's pretty good. And his question is, ask him, is Half Dome or Salathi Wall a more scenic route to take?
Is Half Dome or the Salathi Wall?
Yeah.
Oh, so the Salathi is a classic route on El Cap, and actually what I free soloed in all these pictures are mostly on the Salathi Wall. I did some variations off the Salathi, but that's roughly, yeah, tell them the Salathi for sure. It's amazing. And that's actually an example of something post having kids. Like, so this spring, I went to Yosemite for 1 week. I used to spend 3 months a year in Yosemite, sort of like 6 weeks or 2 months in the spring and the fall. And this spring, I just told, my wife, with my wife's blessing, was like, I'm just leaving everybody. I'm going to Yosemite. I have my 1 week by myself in my van. I'm like, I'm doing it. And I basically whipped myself into El Cap shape and did the solo speed record on the Salathi. So using a rope, using climbing equipment, but climbing by myself. It's like a certain type of climbing. And so I basically halved the speed record on the Salathi Wall. But I got so crushed, and I was kind of like, that's the tough thing with being a dad, is I'm just not quite as current. Really I needed a month or maybe 6 weeks in Yosemite to kind of get back into that mode and get used to climbing 3,000 feet at a time without getting tired. But I only had a week, so I just made that work. And I was like, God, I'm busted. I went home feeling like totally worked, but that's all right.
All right, we got time for a couple more.
Yes. This is on. So Alex, my question is, when you're free soloing a wall and you're halfway up or you're pretty far up, and you get a cramp, what then?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions like, what if you get a cramp? What if you sneeze? Like, what if you get stung by a bee? Like, all those things don't matter. Like, you don't get cramps. In the same way that if you're an Olympic marathoner, you don't just get a cramp in the middle of the marathon. You know what I mean? It's like, if this is what you do and you spend your whole life preparing for it, things don't just happen like that. And same, like, if I'm free soloing and I get stung by a bee, I'm just like, ow, I got stung by a bee. But like, you don't care. And actually in the springtime in Yosemite, there are ants, like red ants. There's like a season where sometimes the cracks are like running with red ants. And so when you're climbing, they're literally just ants going down your arms and biting you. And it smells bad when they bite you, and it hurts, obviously. But you're not just gonna fall to your death because you got bitten by an ant. You're just like, ow. It's like, yeah, so a lot of things like that just don't totally matter.
Yeah. I was thinking, how thirsty were you? Because at first I thought you had a bottle of water, but that was just your chalk bag.
Yeah, that's my chalk bag. So for the actual free solo on El Cap, it took me a little under 4 hours to do the climb. And this is another reason why I'd worked with the camera crew, because there were people on the wall filming in certain places, they'd stashed some food and water for me on 2 or 3 key ledges. And then actually when I got near the top, one of the riggers, someone you don't see in the film, but it helped get the rope into position, I basically just took his water bottle off his harness and was like, water! And I was like, psyched! And so, that's kind of the benefit of having a crew like that, is just that it helps with logistics. If I'd been by myself, obviously I could have stashed that stuff myself, but because there's a crew there, it's like, great, take advantage of the help.
Yeah. Right in here in front, do we have one? Oh, got one over here? Here we go.
Hey, Alex. First of all, congratulations on being alive. It's great to have you here. And the thing that's fascinating is that, we're all climbing mountains in our lives, professionally, personally, Some people are battling health issues, whatever. And so we all can relate to your story. My question is, did you ever look down? And what did you think when you looked down?
That's also a common question about looking down. And yeah, so actually you spend more time looking down when you rock climb than you would think, because your feet are the most important. Like basically your feet are driving you the whole time. So you're constantly looking at your feet and like raising your feet and placing your feet. So you're looking down nonstop. But that actually was a big part of the visualization, is to imagine what will the view be like when I place my foot on a certain thing and I'm looking 3,000 feet down to the valley floor. But no, I mean, but part of the reason I'm up there is because I love the exposure, I love the view, I love the air, I mean, Yosemite is one of the most beautiful places on earth, and so to spend your whole day looking at this incredible view is not the worst thing.
Were you ever afraid of heights? I feel like it's human nature to be afraid of heights.
I disagree. I don't think it is human nature.
Really?
I've never been afraid of heights, obviously. I've always loved the exposure. I love climbing trees, and that's like that one slide at the beginning of my presentation. It's like I just liked getting on top of things my whole life. Like I would always walk across the top of the monkey bars, things like that, where you're like, oh, it's cool. There's a lot of air around me. It feels cool. No, I think that's, yeah.
All right.
I think that's pretty natural. I think a lot of kids are like really into to things like that. I think that you learn the fear for it.
Wow. Is anybody not afraid of heights here? Oh, we got a few. Yeah, okay.
Well, most people who say they're afraid of heights aren't really afraid of heights. They're afraid of injury or death. They're afraid of falling to their death, which is totally fine. I mean, I'm afraid of dying too. And like, I don't want to fall to my death. I just feel very comfortable that I'm not going to fall in positions of height.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable that I'm not going to fall.
Well,
that's why I'm in this chair.
Yeah, exactly.
All right in front.
Yeah, the question is, has anyone else tried to free solo El Cap since I did it? And no, nobody's tried. And actually, so free soloing El Cap was the end of this very long journey for me, and I've done something like 30 or so, 35 free solos that have all that haven't been repeated, that no one else has ever done, things like that. And so of those 35-ish routes, I would think that at least 6 or 8 of them are almost required to free solo El Cap. Like you can't go from 0 to 100. Like you kind of have to build up with some of these other walls. And nobody's done any of those, so I feel like nobody's even on the path. You know what I mean? Like nobody's even started working towards it. But we'll see.
All right, that wraps up our time. Alex Honnold, everybody. Yeah, thank you, brother. Hey, will you do something real fun for me real quick?
What's that?
Come over here. They got to change up the set. All right, as we get ready, before we get ready for our next speaker, we got to make a quick set change here. But Alex, I want to do something off the cuff here. I was doing some research on you. As we go ahead and change out our sets here, I found some urban legends about you, and all I want you to do is give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on if these are true, okay? There's a lot of stuff about you on the internet.
This is unscripted. We'll see where it goes. Let's see what you found.
Yes, here we go. Number 1, when Alex Honnold was born, he carried his mom home from the hospital. I knew it.
Yeah.
When Alex Honnold once beat Waldo to the top of Half Dome. Waldo has been hiding ever since.
No,
okay.
That's not true.
Alex Honnold doesn't cheat death. He wins fair and square.
I don't even know what that means.
I think that's a thumbs up. Alex Honnold correctly predicted 100% of his NCAA tournament bracket last year in his office pool.
I don't know what that means either, but I'll give that a no.
Are you a sports fan?
I'm a little bit of a sports fan, but not college sports.
Who's your team?
I only root for whichever team is winning, so I'm really a bad fan. But actually, but I will say that the thing I love about sports, I love seeing excellence. I love seeing high performance. So I want to see the best players win, basically. Like I want to see people play at their absolute best and do incredible things. And so I don't really care about the teams, and anyway.
So you love Tom Brady?
Yeah. I mean, basically, like
and Patrick Mahomes.
I love LeBron. Like a long career, consistent excellence for a long period of time. I'm like, I find that inspiring.
Yeah.
Like somebody like Kobe. You're like, that's.
So you're trying to tell me you don't love any Chicago teams, is what you're saying? It's gonna get better, guys. It's gonna get better. I promise. Let's see. When Alex Honnold slices onions, the onions cry. Alex Honnold read Gone with the Wind in 20 minutes and change.
I think I actually did read Gone with the Wind. It probably took me like a month, so that's a big no.
What's your biggest hobby outside of climbing?
I don't know, all mountain things. I run, I mountain bike, I ski, you know, all the things you'd expect from somebody that spends a lot of time in the mountains.
All right.
Maybe my most sort of oddball hobby, I do the New York Times crossword every day. It's a real personal passion.
There you go. What about, would you ever do Dancing with the Stars?
No, well, I guess I'd be eliminated in the first round or whatever. I'd be immediately fired.
I think you'd be great. And plus, especially the lifts. You'd be awesome on the lifts. That's it. All right, a couple more, and then I'm going to let you go, Alex. Alex Honnold has never had a problem connecting to any Wi-Fi network anywhere in the world.
That's a big no. That's.
Alex Honnold got the new Taylor Swift album 2 weeks before it came out.
My wife would have been so happy, but no.
Let's see. Alex Honnold ran a 250-mile race through Yosemite National Park barefoot while only eating plants, and he high-fived a bear.
That one I was like, is that true? But no, that one's not true. But.
And finally, Alex Honnold became the first person ever to win the show Naked and Afraid. He was neither naked nor afraid. Alex, thank you, man. Thanks for being a good sport.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Legendary athlete. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
One more round of applause for Alex Honnold.